Hello, this is 80s Aaron for Patriot Soapbox. Today we're going to talk about the Freedom of Information Act and how to submit a FOIA request. Okay, so first let's look at some good resources that might help you. So I'm looking here at Judicial Watch, and they have a nice page about the open record laws, and there are some resources that you can download that might be helpful to you. Basically, FOIA laws are processes that you can follow to request public records from government agencies. On the federal level, it's the Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA for short. There are also FOIA laws in the states. Sometimes they're called something different, like right to know law or sunshine law. Basically, they mirror the federal law, although things are a little different from state to state as far as what they consider a public record. When you make a public record request, anything you request that falls within the FOIA law will be disclosed to you if it's available. If you make a request for records which do not fall within the FOIA law, then you will receive a letter stating that, unfortunately, they're not able to fulfill the request, or perhaps they'll give you part of what you asked for and have to redact the portions of the document which are not public records. So, another good resource is Ballotpedia. They have a nice page here that basically explains what the FOIA laws are on the federal level, and they also have a nice page which lists all the states so that you can look at the state records. Here's for Massachusetts, and it gives information about court cases and when the law was passed. And if you go down here further, it shows you what records are covered and what exemptions are. So, for an example of an exemption to the public record request, it tells you that in Massachusetts, you would not be able to request the personal contact information for individuals who own a firearms. So if you submitted a FOIA request in Massachusetts where you wanted the names and addresses of firearm owners, that request would be declined because that information is exempt from the FOIA laws in Massachusetts. So you can see here on Ballotpedia, here's this, they call it the state sunshine laws, and then they have a page for each state for you to look at. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the question, do I really need to submit a FOIA? Often you feel like you need to, but someone else may have already requested that information and put it out there. So I'm going to show you just a few examples, and there's many more than this. For example, if you're looking for a government agency employee salary, or if you're looking for the pensions, or if you're looking for a checkbook, the expenses for a government agency, Open the Books collects that information in all 50 states. So, for example, you could go to Iowa and you could look at all state and local employee salaries and look for a certain agency or a certain person's name. You could look at the spending in those states. There's campaign cash here, a lot of different financial information on Open the Books. Another example is the Black Vault. The Black Vault does kind of the woo-woo type stuff. They have UFO, declassified documents, like here he's got a library called The Fringe, and they have mind control, New World Order, parapsychology. So this is a good resource. You can look at all kinds of documents that the Black Vault has already received from FOIA requests in the past. Another good resource is Muckrock. Muckrock is very similar to the previous examples, but it's different in that it's actually a community who are requesting information through their request system. You say file a request and you fill out this form, and then when the request is answered, it actually comes back to the Muckrock website for everyone to look at. And then people here comment on what's in that document, and they have, I guess you'd call it a news site here, where people actually write up articles regarding the FOIA documents that come back to Muckrock. So it's sort of a request center slash news source. Okay, so let's say that you don't find a website that's already done FOIA requests for the information that you need. The next thing you need to determine is, where do I need to go to make my request? So let's say that you wanted to look into how many police calls incidents are there in San Francisco. So one of the first things that I do is, if it's something large, like a large federal agency, a large city like San Francisco, a lot of those agencies will create an open data portal or open data. So I'll Google like open data San Francisco or data portal San Francisco, or I'll look on their website for those words, open data or data portal, and see if they have one. So here in San Francisco, they do. And basically, this is a repository of information that people used to request in FOIAs, but they've decided to just publish it so that they don't have to get flooded with all these requests. You know, in this example, we have different categories: economy, city management, transportation, public safety. So let's look in public safety because we wanted to look at police incidents. So here we go. Police department incidents, historical, 2003 to 2018. So I'm going to look at that. So here it gives you information about what data is contained in this table. And you can see that here's the table. And if you want to, a lot of these data portals are really pretty cool. So I'm going to say I want to look at it. And here I can select like create chart. So let's go ahead and let's do location. Make a pie chart. Let's see if we can get that to work. Oh, of course, it makes an error. See there? So I just played around here and I was able to make a nice chart. Generally, once you get a result, there's an export button. You can export it. You can export all this data and play with it in Excel yourself, and go ahead and organize this data in a way which meets the needs of the story you're writing or whatever you're researching. So that's pretty cool. So always look and see if it's something big to see if you have an open data portal. So let's say that they don't have an open data portal. So the next thing you would do in the website for the unit of government is type into their search box public record requests or public records, and it will typically bring you to some page on their website where you can go ahead and make your request. So this is Sacramento County, and this is the open public records page. And here, and this is very typical, you can search previous requests because maybe what you're looking for someone else already requested. Or if you don't find it, go ahead and make your request. So let's say in this case, I want to get the names, positions, and hire date for all the new hires in Sacramento County last year in 2018. So I'm going to first look and see if a request has already been made. This one I can search, so I'm going to say, let's say, hire date. And let's see if any requests mention hire date. So I'm just going to look here and see if I see anything here that meets this requirement. Here's one maybe. Sacramento County 2018 compensation data. And I look here and it says last name, first name, race, gender, I don't care about that. Compensation, there we go, date hired, and job title. So I could go ahead and pull up this request, get that data, and boom, I don't have to wait. It's right there, and I can just sort that and pull the data out I want, and I don't have to make a request. So that's a very good hint. Most places, especially the larger ones, they leave their request data out there for everyone to use, and that saves you bugging them with requests. Okay, so let's go back and let's say we didn't find what we needed and I actually need to make a request. So I'm going to click on make a request and it's going to bring up a request form. So here, basically you fill in your information, my email address, my name, phone number, address, city, state, etc. And then in this box, I would type in a description of the actual request. Hit submit. And generally with these portals, sometimes they have you create a an account with the password so you can log back in, check the progress on your request. Sometimes, there'll be a little thing you can click on to send a note. And when the request is ready, you'll get an email that says, please visit our request center to see the reply to your request. So what do you write here? So how do you create a request? So basically it's not as complicated as you think. And here I just kind of typed up an example. So I put the date that I made the request, and then you can address the person as Record Access Officer. And then I'm going to say pursuant to the California Public Record Act, so I always mention the name of the act, I am requesting the following records. An electronic document, so I'm telling them the format I want, which lists all County of Sacramento employees, which were new hires during the calendar year of 2018. So I'm giving them sort of the date range I'm looking at. Each employee record should include the employee's full name, hire date, and the job title. Responsive documents may be emailed to the address below. This request is being made in the public interest and is not for commercial purposes. That's a good line to include in your request because in some states, they will ask you, usually it'll actually be in their form, a little box you click. Requesting for commercial purposes is if you were, for example, one of those sales lead companies and you're going to request the name of all the department heads at a unit of government, and then you're going to turn around and you're going to create a prospecting list that you sell. And so this is a profit center for you doing these FOIAs and then selling that data to interested parties. That would be a commercial purpose. And I don't think probably anyone watching this video will be making requests for commercial purposes. So when you make a request for a commercial purpose, there's all sorts of waivers and legalese you have to get into. So I always just mention, hey, you don't even have to ask me. I'm just going to tell you this is not for commercial purpose. The request is being made in the public interest. Okay? And then another thing I always mention is please notify me of any fee amount prior to processing this request. So just to stop for a minute and talk about fees, generally probably any request you make will not accrue any fees. This is just kind of a rule of thumb. If you're requesting a document like a police report, a financial report, something that's already been generated, that's fairly simple to find, that isn't massive, 10,000 pages, and it's something that the clerk can probably pull for you and format and get to you like in about an hour, they're not going to charge you. Now, if you make this huge, gigantic request, I want every email ever written by this employee in the last 10 years, that they're going to charge you for that, okay? Because that means that you're probably going to pull somebody off their regular duties and they are going to need to work on your request for weeks. And so, generally, in a situation like that, they would send you some sort of answer, either an estimate of what it's going to cost, or they tell you, for example, the first hour is free of charge. After that, we're going to bill you $50 an hour to get this data together. So, just again, a general rule, just request what you need and do some research before you make the request so you feel like you know that little, needle in a haystack that you're actually looking for. If you don't know what you're looking for, generally you can make some phone calls and find out. So, in the example where I was talking about wanting a list of new hires, call the HR department and say, hey, I'm going to be submitting a FOIA request. If I was looking for new hires from last year, what report would I request? And generally, believe it or not, they'll answer you. Then you just thank them for your time, go over to the FOIA center, and you know exactly what the name of the document is. And they'll be able to handle that request very quickly, maybe in 5 minutes, which has happened to me. I made some phone calls, said I'd make the request. I made the request, and boom, I got it like before I even, right after I hit accept and send. So people are generally friendly about things. I don't call people and get real specific, like, I'm looking for John Doe's police report. I'll just call and say, if I'm requesting a police report, what would I put on my FOIA request? And generally they'll tell you. So that's up to you whether you feel like you want to do that or not. However, just don't feel like they're your enemy because really they need to be your friend. So always be super polite. Always thank them for their time. Tell them how much you appreciate their efforts, when you correspond with these people, because they just want to complete the request and you just want the data. So, um, you know, uh, for the type of general request that probably you would be making, I don't think that you're going to get charged. I don't think you need to get a lawyer. And if it gets really big and then they send back, oh, it's going to be $500 and you don't want to pay the $500, then at that point just say, thank you very much for your time. At this time, I do not want to proceed further and I am closing this request. So that way, you found out that, hey, this request I made, it's not the correct scope. This is not something someone can pull easily. And then you can rethink and maybe submit another request later. That was worded better and was kind of the scope was narrowed down to what you really, really need. Or you can just determine that this is something that they're not able to retrieve for you. Sometimes think they put big fees out there to discourage you from making the request, but it is what it is. So we'll go over this again really quickly. If you're typing out a request in an email or you're filling out this request description box, just make sure somewhere in this form you have the date so that you can refer to the date that you submitted it. If you don't know the person's name, you can always say something like Record Access Officer or FOIA Officer will work. And then you want to name the act for that state or unit. And then just really spell out what records you're requesting. You want to say what form. Most people want electronic documents, not a pile of paper. Be specific about what you're looking for. If you're looking for fields of data like full name, hire date, and job title, because there might be several documents that list these three things. There may be other information on the document. Usually, unless it's exempt from the FOIA law, they'll just send you the whole document. You might get some kind of bonus data. Um, you tell them that you want it emailed or mailed or however you want that. Remind them that this is not for commercial purposes and ask them to notify you of any fee amount prior to processing the request. And then make sure that you have all your contact information there, so they can get a hold of you. And sometimes they'll call. I've had people call me and say, hey, I got your request. I'm the clerk handling it. Can you just tell me what this is about? I don't get it, and we talk. So these people, generally, I don't think I've ever talked to an angry clerk. So, all right. So, sometimes you get a form like this. Sometimes you get a PDF form that you have to fill out and scan, if it's like a smaller unit of government. And sometimes you don't have a form at all. There'll just be a page that explains, hey, here's the email address, send your request to this email address. And there are sometimes specific instructions that state things like, make sure you include this, make sure you include that. Sometimes the website will direct you to a list of departments and it'll say, here are the departments, here are the email addresses for the FOIA officer in each separate department. And then you got to do a little detective work. So in the example with the new hires, I'm pretty sure I want that to go to HR, but I might check out the HR page on the website just to make sure, that the description there states they handle payroll or compensation or something like that, or they're the hiring person. That way I know if I send it to HR and I'm looking for new hire information, I probably got it to the right place. So after you send your request, in some states there's a clause in the law which determines the legal amount of time that they have to respond to you. So I believe in California is 10 working days. And if you wait a while and you don't get a response, it's fine to call them, or go back in the portal and say, hey, I requested this on August 21st. It's been 3 weeks. I've received no response at all. Could you please update me with the progress on this request? Because honestly, sometimes if you send an email, it goes into the junk folder and they don't even know that you submitted the request. And so you're sweating it out, wondering why you didn't get an answer and they don't even know it happened. So if you don't hear from them, it's perfectly fine to check back. You can pick up the phone and check back. And again, generally people are very nice about it and they will look for your request and let you know what's going on with it. So hopefully this has answered some questions that you may have. Kind of remove that mystique about it, because really it's not a big deal. It's not hard to do. I will mention again, if you go to Muckrock, which was the website we were talking about here, where it was kind of like a news source. If you click on File a Request, this is the Muckrock request form. When I'm just free-handing an email, sometimes I'll look at this website just to kind of remind me of what to include in my email, like the title, the name of the agency, whom it may concern, pursuant to the name of the law, I hereby request, write the description of the document you're looking for. The requested document will be made available to the general public. This is not for commercial purposes. In the event of any fees, I would be grateful if you inform me of the total charges in advance of fulfilling my request. And so the Muckrock form here, you can look at this anytime but not fill it out, just as sort of a template so that you remember all the different components of a request that we talked about. Thank you very much for your time and have fun with FOIA.